Okay, Chair, we're live on YouTube, so I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Good morning and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual LED monitoring forum meeting on the 18th of October 2022. In the absence of Councillor Sam Hawkins, I am your stand-in chair for the day, Councillor Paul Miller. I would also like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. Based on a decision of the Council to continue virtual meetings until the 31st of October 2022, I would like to remind both members and public attending or watching that this Council has delegated much of its decision-making powers to our senior officers. May I remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. Please turn any telephone devices off or to silent. In the event of a break in the internet connection, please bear with us as we try to reconnect after 15 minutes. If we are not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait for me to call you, which I will endeavour to do as expeditiously as I can. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of forum members here present.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott, please. Councillor Bickley. Councillor De Salem.
Present, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Hayward. Councillor Hookway.
Present, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Young.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Loudon. Councillor Miller.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Rowland, please.
Present, thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. And I can confirm that we're correct, Chair.
Thank you. Phew. There we go. Before we move to agenda item 1, we need to appoint a vice chair for this meeting. I'd like to ask Councillor Hookway if you'd be happy to act as vice chair.
Yes, I'm happy to act as vice chair. Thank you, Councillor Miller.
And instead of taking a vote, if anybody has an issue with it, if you raise your electronic blue hand, I don't think anybody will. Hopefully not. No. Okay, so that's confirmed. So we now move formally on to agenda item 1, which is public speaking. There is one member of the public registered to speak. To you, Sarah.
Thank you. Yes, so we have a question from Miss Ashton. And I'll read that as on her behalf. She couldn't make the meeting today. And the question is, why does Ocean, funded by council taxpayers via LED, get away with not allowing people in to use their toilets and having a door guard on the door? This is not a good look.
Well, that's it. So I'm delighted to say that we have our the Ocean's venue manager with us this morning to answer this question. Justin Moore, I believe you're here. Welcome to the meeting. If I hand over to you, any comments you miss out, I'm sure I might be able to pick up from that. Justin.
Yeah, good morning. So one of the things we had to introduce due to the size of the operation at Ocean was a welcome post to greet all the guests arriving, direct them to where they were heading or deal with any questions. And that came from obviously the pandemic. Something we were able to observe very quickly was the enormous savings on water, consumables, and then the general team hours on cleaning of those toilets. Ocean is a commercial operation. The toilets are for use of the patrons of the building, and the team obviously do make sensible decisions based on the person in front of them, disabilities, pregnant ladies and children. And the majority of the public don't have any issue with using the public toilets, which are 30 yards away from the Ocean building. This is not ideal, but like I said, when dealing with huge volumes of the public on the seafront, the additional costs to opening up those toilets to members of the public run into thousands.
Thanks very much, Justin. And just to add to that, I think we can be clear that your staff don't act as door guards on the front of Ocean as suggested. Number one, and as you said as well, Ocean is not taxpayer funded. It's precisely there to make a profit, isn't it, for the parent charity of LED. Okay, so that's I think we're done now. Unless anybody else wanted to comment, I don't think so. So we move on then to agenda item 2, which is the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 7th of June 2022. If there are any members with any comments on the minutes, please raise your electronic hand. And if there are no issues, I'll assume that you are all content. They are agreed. going, gone. I think everyone's okay with that. So we move now on to agenda item 3, which is apologies. Sarah, over to you to confirm apologies.
Thank you. So we have apologies from Councillor Hawkins and Councillor Dent.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks very much. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. When your name is called and mindful of the new code of conduct, please state your declaration, including which agenda item your declaration relates to. State what exactly the interest is, please, and the specific type of interest you are declaring.
Thank you, Chair. So we'll start with Councillor Arnott, please. Oh, no, he's not in the meeting, beg your pardon. Councillor Desarin, please.
None to declare, Sarah, at the moment, as far as I know.
Thank you. Councillor Hookway.
None that I'm aware of, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Young.
None that I'm aware of, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Yes, I do have a declaration of an effects NRI of being an LED member as a service user. And I wanted to make clear, to avoid any doubt, that I'm not a member of any board or trust of LED, just a user of their services. And the advice I've had is that I can remain, discuss and vote on all items in this meeting.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Rowland, please.
None, thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. And are there any other councillors in the meeting who want to declare an interest for any of the items on this agenda? I think that's no. I'll pass back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so now, firstly, I just wanted to welcome any members, by the way, of any councillors who are outside the forum that have joined the meeting. I think Councillor Ledger has just joined, so welcome to him. And also wanted to extend a welcome to Karen Best, who is new to LED, LED's new Director of Finance. So a warm welcome to Karen to these meetings. And also a farewell in advance. This will be Jamie Bryan, LED's Director of Deliveries, last meeting on this forum. I wanted to, on behalf of the forum and on behalf of the chair, who is usually here, Councillor Hawkins, I wanted to extend a huge thanks to him for the reports he has provided to this forum and wish him all the best for the future. And we'll be hearing from him later today, as he'll be coming in on agenda item 7. So agenda item 6. Agenda item 5, sorry. We do have one matter of urgency, and that is contained in, I think it's agenda item 14, which is the Collerton Leisure Centre update that Tim Child will be presented with. That's been a late item, so that's a matter of urgency. That'll be dealt with later on. Agenda item 6, confidential and exempt items. There is one item which officers recommend should be dealt with in this way. That's listed as agenda item 14, 15. It's 15 now, as we've had a late item, which is budget variations. We now move on to agenda item 7, LED facilities and activities update, report introduced by Jamie Bryan, Director of Delivery LED. Over to you, Jamie.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your kind words. I probably won't run through the report. I thought, hopefully if council have had opportunity to read the opening paragraph of the customer feedback, probably summed up some of the feeling really of the team and customers. And I just thought it was pertinent to put that in. Really, it's I think we probably all know it's a challenging time out there. The team have continued to deliver well. It's relatively consistent despite the headwinds that are there and we know are coming. But I think overall it's been a positive summer from a delivery perspective, and I think so hopefully that paragraph from that, and it's a genuine customer feedback. I was just keen to share it really. So happy to take any questions from the forum.
Thank you very much, Jamie. So, are there any non-members wishing to speak on this item? Councillor Young, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've just been looking at the energy reduction possibilities. I wonder if Jamie can explain where we are on some of these exciting prospects that we've got of reducing our costs and going carbon free.
Yeah, very happy to. I think probably the first one, which is happening as we sit here today, is the Pool Century project that was an investment from East Devon of about £60,000. Those installs are happening as we speak, and with a fair wind and access to the very few engineers that seem to be available to do this type of work, we will start to see some benefit from that in November. So that is happening. Another project I think I've referenced is we're working with Swim England, who are the governing body for swimming, and a commercial organisation to reuse heat from computer servers, which is very, very innovative new technology. And that install is happening in November. We've had a few stop-starts there. And again, hopefully we should start to see some benefit. We're unable to quantify that benefit as we sit today because it's such new technology. Or it's not new technology, but the innovation is new. So that's happening as we speak. And myself and some of our team and East Devon's FM colleagues are reopening the dialogue around some of the bigger, larger investment opportunities, sort of looking at solar PV, looking at ground source, air source heat pump type technology to improve. And that's a longer term project, but there's a lot of active dialogue happening as we speak.
Thank you there very much for that, Jamie. Councillor de Saram, Bruce.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Chair. And absolutely, Jamie, I think this is amazing customer feedback that you received. It really sets the report out in a very positive note. I wanted to focus on the LED, the big week, which is mentioned in that report. And I want to know how much you showed the number of people that tried it out. Did you sort of follow that up to see whether they'd like to become members? Did you kind of like get more involved as to what sporting activities they'd like to do? And how will you sort of follow on from the big week? If you could be kind enough to share any thoughts, Jamie, that would be most appreciated.
Absolutely, thank you. So, I mean, that feedback keeps going, and overall, whilst we don't particularly attribute sales to just the big week, because a lot of activity happens. September's a traditional busy month because people come back from holidays and want to start getting more active again after the summer. So traditionally a big month anyway. And I think that one of the things at the top of the report, we had over 1,000 new customers throughout August and September. So again, a positive experience, and the team do follow up if people don't join, because obviously it's not just about membership, although that is important to the business. We are a community organisation. It's important that people can pay and play as well. So we do follow up with those activities. And further into the report, you'll see there's also Wellness Week that's happening as we speak now. So again, another initiative to drive sort of different activities. So it's not just membership. I think it's quite important that as a partner of the authority and community operation, you don't have to be a member. So I think that is key for us. But Wellness Week is coming in, and we do continue to follow that up with those customers that haven't necessarily joined. Happy to include some further detail actually in the following report if that would be helpful.
Sure it will be, but thanks very much for that, Jamie. Councillor Rowland, Jack, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo as well what's just been said. Thank you very much for the comprehensive report, Jamie. If I could go back, I was really interested in reading the information about the energy reduction projects. And I did have a couple of questions revolving around those. On the Pool Century, is it possible at this stage to quantify the envisaged savings that could emerge from that? That's my first question. On the, as you said, it's very interesting about the third-party IT servers. And I was just wondering about who picks up the insurance costs for actually housing those servers, and the actual security of the location, and out of hours access if it's needed. And my final question revolving around the solar panels. I noticed you said about it. There's discussions going on with EDEC at the moment about that subject. I just wonder whether you or Tim could say a little bit more about what stage those discussions have actually got to.
Thanks, Jack. Shall I go to Jamie first, then can Tim come in afterwards? Is that okay? Okay, Jamie, over to you first.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I'm frantically writing all the questions down.
Happy to repeat them, Jamie, if it helps.
No, I've got them. Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of the pool centre, I think there was a number put into the original business case, which was, again, I'm approximating here, it's between 15 and 20,000 per year, and there'll be some unquantifiable benefit around resource improvement, where we're less reliant on manual intervention of the physical plant, but that there is an energy saving, albeit that may well have increased now given the increase in tariffs of all of utilities that have gone up. So I think the payback was around about 3 years when the original business case was submitted. I would need to check the exact numbers on that. That's certainly what we will be expecting, and we'll be monitoring that over the first quarter once we've got a fully functioning system, and we'll certainly be reporting against that. In terms of the server security, we are just going through, ultimately we are hosting, well, we're providing a space for a third-party company, and it's actually in our plant room, which in itself sounds very strange, that you put IT in a corrosive environment, but the system that they have protects their hardware, and we're just finalising the contractual situation with them, where we won't be responsible for any of their hardware, and particularly their data, which they could have data from all sorts of things, so we won't take any responsibility for that. Ultimately, we're responsible for our building, as we are for any aspect of our building, and would be and should be. A plant room is quite a serious area, so our security for that area is as it would be any other time, but we'll be protecting ourselves with an appropriate contractual arrangement, if that answers that question. In terms of the solar panel conversations, we've had a number of conversations. I believe colleagues have in the council as well, and we're now just getting together, and we need to try and formalise a plan and move that forward now. We've actually got a session in, I think, 2 weeks' time with the FM team, so George and Tim, to start to pull those conversations together. So we've had quite a lot, probably in isolation of each other, and we now need to start firming that up and moving that forward.
Okay, Jack, did that answer everything? Do you want to come back at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Jamie. It did more or less. I just wondered, one of the aspects you just mentioned there about housing the IT service in the plant room, I assume though that still means that LED are responsible for the insurance cover because it's within LED property. So presumably that might have added to the insurance costs because of that added risk that's being put into the building.
We're confirming that with insurance. I mean, ultimately, they wouldn't be our assets to insure. The assets are owned by the company, so Deep Green. They're their assets. We're housing them, same as we would a swimming club's equipment, if that makes sense. They're not paying a rent for that space currently, but it's all covered by the contract, or what will be a contractual arrangement in place between LED and Deep Green Technologies.
Okay.
Okay, Tim, Charles, did you want to come in at all, or was that all covered off by Jamie?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll just come in very briefly just to confirm, firstly, the pool management systems. Yeah, I've just had a quick look at the capital bid form, which we submitted last autumn. And yeah, Jamie's right. It's around circa 50k costs, 16k annual return. So yeah, about 3 years payback. In terms of energy efficiency savings, Yeah, there's various discussions now taking place with the FM team regarding what I would say sort of low-scale interventions. However, there is an acknowledgement that we need to be bolder, and part of that is a discussion that we are just beginning with Exeter University to look at a new energy strategy across our properties. We have a capital budget already approved last year for, I think it was 50k to appoint a consultant. And bearing in mind the work that the university have done, the very good work they've done for us across the council in recent years around this particular subject, we wanted to involve them to come up with a high level strategy to cover the properties occupied by LED, but also all of our properties, because otherwise the danger is that we're sort of just going for potentially sort of low hanging fruit, if that makes sense, rather than looking at the overall strategy. So, and that will pick up PV. It may well also pick up EV, which is obviously relevant to the example in Jamie's report. But it will also look at other opportunities, because I think there is a danger that everyone thinks PV is the solution and PV won't always be the solution. So yeah, there's that bigger piece of work. So yes, there's the more local discussions taking place with LED, but there's also a higher level strategy piece of work that's just beginning as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tim, for that. Over to our portfolio holder responsible for leisure and sport, as well as culture and what's the other one? Tourism. Councillor Hookway, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Yeah. Thanks also to Jamie for the report. I wanted just to say how pleased I am to read that you're actually being very proactive in trying to have energy saving devices installed and so on. My point of talking really is about the Rural England Prosperity Fund, which, if it continues, does allow for investments into devices and equipment that allows for energy saving and being net zero. And my question really is, are you anticipating putting in any bids to East Devon for any particular pieces of capital equipment in the next couple of months? Because we are quite tight on timetable with the Rural England Prosperity Fund. And I'm happy to put those forward for you on your behalf, but I just want to know whether you're going to go down that route or whether you're going to hang back. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Is that a question for Jamie, or would Peter like to come in as well?
Well,
the CEO? I don't know.
Anybody.
It's a high-level question. That.
Yeah, it is, and it is. I mean, it's a question because we have this prosperity fund. This Rural England Prosperity Fund was an unexpected addition to the Shared Prosperity Fund. Both these funds have very tight timetables and also very specific criteria. So if we are able to put in a bid in, we will consider it, but we need to know if anything's coming forward. So there's a question open to anybody. It doesn't have to be Jamie, but okay. I just really want to raise the awareness that this prosperity fund exists, yes. And if LED wish to make use of it, then now's the time to say, really. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. I see that Peter Gilpin and Charlie Plowden, they both have their hands. So I'll go to Peter first and then to Charlie. Does that work? Brilliant. Okay, I'll go over to Peter first.
Yeah, probably might be picked up better by Charlie, but I know we've had discussions about that fund, Councillor Hookway, and for example, I think in conversations we've had, Axminster, as an example, and the Flamingo Pool would be covered by the Rural Fund, and I believe Honiton and Sidmouth would be as well, because we've been talking about potentially applying for some of that technology. I was going to mention it in my paper right at the end. It is possible that with a fair wind, if we got our act together, we could have our swimming pools completely unreliant on gas by December next year. The technology is there to replace our gas boilers with air source or ground source heat pumps backed up by PV from the roof or from car parks. And this is a massive expenditure which is really hitting us really hard at the moment. And if we did get something together quickly and took advantage of some of these funding opportunities, Whether we do or not, I'm really looking to think that we should be pushing forward to try and get our swimming pools free from gas boilers by this time next year, certainly by Christmas next year.
Thanks, Peter. Over to you, Charlie.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, interesting enough, Exmouth's the only town that's not eligible for this prosperity fund, just so members are aware of that. So as Peter and Nick have suggested, the other towns are. I've been having discussions with Tom Winters and Andy Wood about this because they're leading the preparation and the development of the scheme and how it can potentially benefit us. And it's part of a wider mix of opportunities. It's not just exclusive to leisure centre. It covers all community assets. There's an opportunity to transition to more energy efficient systems, amongst many other aspects around improving infrastructure, access, the visitor experience, etc. What I do want to say, the scheme's going to go live from April 2023. So there's a need for further information, I think, to come to all members, but also to the forum about how the scheme will roll out. What's the criteria? What's the process for applying for the fund, etc., etc. But yes, I think initially there's a real opportunity here to look at that scheme and to help facilitate some of the issues that Tim sort of raised, and also Peter with our facilities. So it'd be crazy not to seek opportunities to capitalise on it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Charlie. And as Peter said, I think we can return to this in Peter's report in part B. I think it's a very important topic that we need to discuss further. No, Jeff Young, you don't want to speak again? I was tempted to adopt the King Charles, back again, dear, oh dear, oh dear. But you don't want to come back.
Just one quick question on canopies over car parks. Would that require planning? I have a feeling it would.
Tim Child, I think.
Yeah, most likely it would. We also, canopies over car parks, we need to be really, really careful. The car parks that we choose, arguably the estuary and the Imperial Road car parks next to the wildlife refuge, arguably isn't the better site. So it all needs to feed into that wider strategy piece of work. So yes, we've been approached, but there may be other more appropriate sites for that.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody. There's a really good discussion there. I just wanted to reiterate something that Jamie said at the start, just highlighting that experience, the customer feedback experience. I found it really powerful, and I think it sums up really why LED is a public service. And again, just wanted to reiterate our thanks to Jamie for bringing us these reports. They've been extremely informative over the last year or more. So thank you very much. And this report is just for noting, so no recommendations needed. So we can move straight on, I think, to agenda item 8, which is LED Community Engagement Report, to be presented by Peter Gilpin, CEO of LED. Over to you, Peter.
Back to Jamie, I think.
To Jamie, then. My script is wrong.
Apologies, Chair. It's got Peter's name on it. And again, I think if I may, Chair, a similar scenario here probably really sets out the community aspect. We talk about, at the top of the report, 22 year 8s. We've got some year 1s and 2s at school, and then at the bottom of the report, we talk about a 100-year-old walk leader. If there's ever an example of sort of working with every aspect of the community, you've probably got two ends there, which is fantastic to see, and a lot of really positive content in between. We had, I think, 50 people we brought together for lunch as our volunteers, and a number of people who couldn't come throughout, for different reasons. A lot of really good activity going on within the community, and Lottie and Jane and Andrew are knocking down a lot of doors to get as much activity done as they can. And I think probably for us as a forum, there's an opportunity for us to grow this here. A lot of really good activity happening, and some positive results. So again, I probably won't go through, but I just want to sort of highlight, the breadth really of what the team are trying to do is I think it's really positive, and a credit to the authority for supporting that, when it would have been easy to have perhaps not done, because there's a cost attached to it. But you can see from the report some of the really good stuff that people are doing, that the team are doing.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jamie. And absolutely, there's so much here. And when we talk about social value and what we, you know, how we want this partnership to work, I think this kind of report sets out just the sheer breadth and depth of what you're doing in the communities. So over to Councillor Sarum. Bruce.
Thank you. Well, as one of the little members, I am pleased to note that the stroke classes were at the Bidmead Centre, and I think this is an example within our ward of the social value that the LED has provided in conjunction with the survivors group. So I think we must congratulate the LED on this particular outreach exercise, and obviously say how pleased we are that it will continue. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thanks very much, Bruce. Anybody else to speak? Councillor Hookway. Nick.
Yes, well, as the other Litlam ward member on the meeting today, I thought I provided a bit of balance, but also to absolutely agree with Councillor Sarum. The Stroke Survivors Club, a very worthy group of people who absolutely have benefited tremendously from their seated exercise. You know, this is, I absolutely echo what you've said, Joe. This is just an amazing example of the social value that LED provides across the district, as well as in Litlam. I'm really pleased to see this. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you very much, Nick. Echo your words completely. Anybody else for this item? I don't think so. So again, this report is simply just for noting, so we'll move swiftly on to agenda item 9, which is the LED KPI dashboard for September 2022. I don't know which LED staff member is going to present this. Jamie, it's over to you. It doesn't say Jamie on my script, but
thank you, Chair, again. I'm just getting my words in whilst I'm here. And again, I think, you know, it probably, you know, represents a lot of what the words were in the delivery report. You know, it's you know, inevitably the summer, we have a lot of swimming, so you see a drop off in September. So this is September's dashboard. You know, an abnormally warm September saw a gym reduction, but you know, strangely group exercise, there tend to be a little bit more committed people. So saw, you know, figures maintained there. Net promoter score, we've been relatively consistent across the year. In terms of our customer feedback, we do look at every single feedback every single day, and we respond to those. So you know, it's been positive. You know, the membership piece, you know, continues. You know, we have small net gains. You know, in the month we're not where we need to be as an organisation, but you know, it's positive, and I think, you know, it will certainly help us going into the headwind that will be the second half of the year with all the challenges we know we have. So overall, I think it probably paints a fair picture and ties back to the words within the delivery report, Chair.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Jamie. I just had a very small question. I see that there's been a quite good growth in sports, people playing sports. I think 28%, if I'm right, if I'm reading that correctly. Is that as I think it is that due to recovery from COVID, quite simply, or are there any other aspects that are contributing to that?
There'll be an element of seasonality, so it's coming out of the summer, so football season starting again, for example. You know, there is always an element of, you know, we are still trying to grow out of the dreaded pandemic, but you know, there will be, and this is based on previous months, so there will be an element of seasonality and the football season starting again, sports clubs coming back after the holidays.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jamie. That's interesting. Okay, over to you, Councillor Rowland. Jack.
Thanks. Not a question, you'll be pleased to know. It's more just an observation that I find that dashboard really useful for summarising exactly where we are with a number of things. So I'd just like to say thank you for introducing that and how helpful I find the information that's contained in that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. I agree completely. It's a really good way of presenting the information. It's certainly it certainly helps me as well. So, Councillor Young, Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the total attendance trend over 6 months, there was a drop in June, July, and then peaked in August and dropped back to September. I don't quite understand what how that can be explained. If Jamie could just explain that, I'm sure there's a simple answer.
And it is exactly that. I mean, it's the trends, isn't it? It's weather will have an impact. We've had a tremendous summer. Gyms will drop. August, we see a peak in casual swim. Likewise, you'll see a peak in May, which again could be due to the holidays. So, you know, there are all sorts of, the seasonality will have an impact. And you know, if you look at the variance, it's about 2,000. So it's not significant. But you will have, and probably the important one is the trend line that's remained reasonably static. It's sort of 52, 53,000. So you will have the peaks and troughs based on the seasonality of the activity. You know, sport dropping off over the summer, for example, so outdoor sports, indoor sports. You know, so you've got quite a few teams will drop out over the summer holidays, whereas swimming again will go up because of inevitably where we've got coastal sites, people on holiday, children swimming. You know, our splash sessions were sold out in August.
Thank you, Jamie, for that. Yeah, and I just wonder how it reflects from, difficult to tell with the other years with COVID, but no, it'd be interesting to compare one year with another, just to see if there's a change in trend. Thank you.
We're doing some work. Sorry, Chair, if I may. We're doing some work on that as we speak, and we're very happy to sort of share those profiles in future reports. Yeah, sort of accepting that, you know, 20 and 21 are strange years, but certainly if we compare 19 to 22, which we do, I think I may have referenced it in my written report around, you know, performance. But yeah, it's also, you know, trend profile within the year. We know we have seasonality, but you know, has that seasonality profile changed with people's mindsets now and their approach to exercise, for example? And that's what we're trying to understand now from some insight.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, 2020 and 21 are going to be outliers, aren't they? But it is going to be interesting to see whether the experience of the pandemic has changed changed people's behaviours, and I'm sure that's the kind of work that's going to be gone into. So again, this item is just one for noting. So thanks to all members for contribution on that item. And we move on now to agenda item 10, which is on the Leisure Strategy Action Plan Delivery and Reporting. Very important agenda item this, and it's to be presented by Charlie Plowden, Service Lead for Countryside and Leisure. Over to you, Charlie.
Thank you, Chair. So following the adoption of the Leisure Strategy this July, I think it's fair to say we need to turn our attention to the associated action delivery plan over the next 5 to 10 years. So what my report sought to do is to lay out the process of how the forum is able to monitor and review the progress against the priority actions listed within the action delivery plan, and also the mechanism for understanding the possible challenges and constraints around delivery, and as a consequence what the future considerations and decisions will be required to ensure completion of the priority actions. So the simple Excel spreadsheet attached with the report, which is a link within the report, provides a framework for keeping the forum updated on progress, and will be completed by those leading the delivery or the activity, or certainly coordinated through me to update on a regular basis, so it comes to the forum with the latest updates. And a very simple traffic light system, I think, is the most effective way to show the levels of progress, which reflects just the conversation that Jack picked up about the LED dashboard. Keeping it as simple as possible, I think, is the most effective way of doing that. So looking at the report itself, on the priority 1 actions listed on page 22, it's worth noting that they are not listed in priority order. Some have very ambitious timelines against them, and this element may need adjusting, particularly around the dual use site renegotiations. There's a pretty tight timeline to complete those, and I'll just touch on that a little bit sort of later with the priorities that we need to take forward. But also there's a need to identify additional resource to help support internal officer time. So moving to the actual priorities themselves, in terms of trying to help steer forum members to where our initial focus should be, I think it's fair to say the officer's view is that work should start on the 4th priority listed, which is the renegotiation of the dual use agreements. This is where Tim's team have now successfully, or almost successfully, renegotiated the College and Grammar School agreement, and this should provide us with a workable template to move forward with other schools. This ties in with the first priority listed, which is the stock condition survey work. Again, this will help officers put forward a more robust and realistic capital programme over the next 5 to 10 year period for each of the dual use sites, as their terms of agreement with EDDC has been renegotiated and updated with the schools. And as has been suggested, there is a significant financial advantage to the council to look to renegotiate these agreements. So alongside this, the council can now start discussions on the 2023-24 management agreement fee with LED. This is the 5th priority listed on page 23 of the agenda pack, reflecting which, when we come round to renegotiating discussions, I think members are probably acutely aware that we've just had to take it on a year-by-year basis since COVID to better understand the demands on the leisure sector. And obviously LED will require certainty going into next year of what that management fee will be, but we will need to factor in issues around the energy costs, the cost of living challenges that are being presented to everyone, and also potentially the impacts of the dual use sites renegotiations and the additional outreach programming. So there's a lot of work to be done around that management fee discussion, which will need to begin in earnest to help meet Simon's budget timelines for this current financial year looking into next year. The good news is that the delivery plan, within the delivery plan, is that the work that's been done by Tim and LED with the refurbishment of the Colleton ATP, the 3rd priority listed, is already a year ahead of schedule, and it's an early win for progressing the strategy's delivery plan. So hopefully we'll be able to show that as a green for completion within the next month or two. So finally, Chair, to be able to facilitate the sequencing of these actions, we will require additional resource and capacity, particularly into Tim's service and likely our legal team around reviewing and renegotiating the dual use agreements. And this is where the leisure enabler role can help to coordinate negotiations between schools, LED and the council to enable a new contractual arrangement between all parties that still secures community access and use. And that's something I know that John will be discussing with the next agenda item report. So it's therefore our recommendation that the leisure enabler role over the next 2 years is directed towards the coordination and enabling of these priority actions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Charlie, for that. And I hope members have read this report, and in particular that Excel sort of spreadsheet, that table contained on page 22 and page 23. Those are the sort of priorities that we need to look at sequencing, as Charlie has said. So I'll move now over to Councillor Hookway. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think what Charlie's laid out is a very succinct programme for us here. There are a number of issues that are absolutely critical as far as I'm concerned. One is getting the dual use agreements absolutely right, because that will save us a great deal of money, but also to see the movement forward for the Cranbrook Sports and Leisure Centre, which will be a very important addition to our portfolio. Not only will it provide for the people of Cranbrook a sports and leisure facility that they need, but it will also provide us with a succession. One of the things that the leisure strategy told us was that we have a number of facilities, pools, that are now approaching what is generally regarded to be their service life, the end of their service life. Now that's not likely, but nevertheless we need to make sure that we have some degree of a programme of replacement should the unexpected and the unwanted actually happen. The great advantage of having a leisure centre in Cranbrook is that it will take heat from the district heating system. It will be net zero and it will be low cost. And I think that's a really, really important thing. I'm very pleased to hear that Colleton ATP is progressing. And of course, the final thing that we must make sure is that we have a very effective and beneficial management arrangement with LED over the next coming year. So I'd like to move this recommendation, please. Thank you, Chair, for listening. Okay.
Thanks very much, Nick. Just before I go to Councillor De Saram, just to say, if you look in at the top of page 22, we obviously go through these priorities, and they're all ranked 1. And what Charlie has put in the report here is that, yes, these actions in the table below are not ranked in priority order. And then he goes on to say it will be for the forum to agree the order in which they should be tackled following discussion. So any comments that members want to make when looking at this table of how we're going to sequence, they're all priority 1, but how are we going to, in what order are we going to try to pursue this? I think that's the discussion, if we need to focus on, and I think Nick has started off very well there. So I will go over to Councillor De Saram, and then we will perhaps have more discussion if we can. Bruce.
Oh yeah, thank you very much indeed, Chair. Well, I totally agree with Charlie saying that we need to have a robust and realistic programme, and I have a couple of quick things to mention. Firstly, I think a newsletter it would be helpful if there would be some form of LED or council newsletter issued once we've established the priorities, as you just mentioned, Chair, because I think the council as a whole would welcome that, and as with the members of the public would welcome that, so they know what direction of journey of travel we're going in. And secondly, I'd like to know, I'm sorry if I may have missed it earlier, something about the leisure enabler role, which is mentioned in this report. Perhaps we could, Charlie could perhaps give a bit more flesh to the bone on what this particular role would be, as I'm sure also that would be of interest to members as to how we're taking that forward. Thank you so much indeed.
Thanks, Bruce. So yeah, Charlie, so obviously John's going to go into more detail, isn't he, on the leisure enabler role in the next item, but I do appreciate Bruce's point in that one of the recommendations is that we're agreeing there that the leisure enabler role will facilitate and provide support. So I do understand Bruce's question. So I'll just over to you there, Charlie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just very briefly, I think when the leisure enabler role was first identified, it was targeted at taking forward more the outreach programme area work that was identified within the strategy. But following a sort of discussion, certainly amongst officers, and the issue around capacity and ability to take forward, that's why I've listed the priority 1 actions. I think there's a real need, an urgent need to focus on those, and that's where we feel the leisure enabler role can make a real difference over the next 12 to 18 months. It's a 3-year funded post through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. So I think if we can align the forum's priorities, hence this discussion, in terms of how they stack up, then we can then focus the leisure enabler to help support internal officers. We bring them forward. We've got a real issue, I think it's fair to say. I don't want to speak for Simon, John or Tim here, but I think we all recognise amongst ourselves that we are going to need support. And at the moment, that's where the leisure enabler role sits, and that can actually make a big difference. So if forum members are happy with that, then we can work out a programme for that level of support that can come from the leisure enabler to help us to move forward with these key priorities. So I'd welcome, views on that, and if there's a degree of support for taking that approach.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Charlie. Bruce, is that okay with you? Do you understand that? Do you want to come back?
Yeah, that was very helpful.
Okay,
thank you.
All right, brilliant. Okay, over to you, Councillor Rowland. You're next.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's an interesting debate about what the priorities should be within all those priority 1s. And I think we probably need to differentiate between those areas where we can deliver from within our own resources, and depending on what the financial implications are, and at the other end of the spectrum, the longer term ambitions revolving around, for example, the delivery of a leisure centre in Cranbrook, and where the finances are going to be coming from to support that. So I think that would determine within those priorities what our priorities could be in terms of short-term and longer-term priorities, and what the implications are both within our own resources and officer time, and where we're going to need to go out to seek other funding. to deliver some of those longer term projects. And picking up on what Councillor Desarum said, I totally support we at an appropriate time. I would envisage about issuing press releases jointly between LED and EDC about this subject, as well as any other forms of publication we can bring into play.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thanks, Jack. Councillor Young, Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. I would say they're all priority ones, unfortunately. But you can split them into two. Difficult to choose, but reducing costs is very, very high up on the priorities. So anything that will reduce our costs, like renegotiating with the shared buildings, reducing some of the expenditure on maintaining buildings, stuff like that. But then you've got the headline grabbers like Cranbrook Swimming Pool. That now to me is now there is a lack of facilities over that part of the district. We're pushing all the housing there, but they haven't got the facilities. But also it will be a massive headline boost as well. Now, really good for comms that we're providing that. Now 50% of me is saying we go for the Cranbrook Swimming Pool as the priority number one. On the other things, we need to reduce our costs as much as possible. So a difficult one.
No, I get that, Jeff. And it's the order in which I think we all accept that they are all priority ones. They all have to be done, but I think it's the order in which they're tackled. And I think Charlie's given us a little bit of a steer as well, in that these dual use sites are key, aren't they? And so I'll just speak personally and say I think that has to be absolutely priority number one. 1A, we need to get out there and be getting into those discussions as soon as possible. Then, of course, there's the issue of on page 23 of the contract, and I guess that's the point. Do we want to be putting all of our resources into renegotiating and going into a long-term contract whilst we're getting these big ticket items such as dual use agreements sorted? I think for me that's one of the key questions, and any steer that the forum can provide on that, I think Charlie would appreciate. But correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, if you just want a blanket recommendation as Councillor Huckway's proposed, we can just go down that route if that's for the best, or we can give you more of a steer, as I think you suggest you'd like in this report.
Thanks, Chair, and feel free, Simon and Tim, to sort of jump in as well, because you might have different views about when we had an internal discussion. I think it's fair to say, as been identified, there are real opportunities to, as Jeff's suggested, to make savings through the dual use site renegotiations. And having done the work, the brilliant work that Tim's been doing along with Peter with Collerton, we have a template there that we can hopefully use and sort of expedite that a lot more efficiently with our other sites. I say that's an easy thing for me to say. I don't want Tim to to come back to me and say, well, you go ahead and do it then. But I think it shows us a way forward. But I think the pressure, and Simon may want to have a view on this certainly on our capital programme. I think any savings that can be made there going forward will be very, very welcome. In terms of the management fee agreement, I think that's something we have to do anyway. We've got to get that over the line by this Christmas. We'll have a sense of what the fee's likely to be, and that's an absolute necessity for LED and their operational management. So that's there anyway. But what we don't know, and we'll probably have a discussion more about this in the part B, is where the real sort of pressure points are, and we need to be fully cognizant of those and to take that into our sort of discussions. So I think we can. It's in our gift to move forward, particularly with the dual use sites. We can allocate, and again, appreciate Tim's view on this, some internal officer time to that. But with the leisure enabler coming in to help facilitate and enable, that will hopefully give it a bit of a boost, and we can sort of get going quicker than we anticipated with that, if Tim feels that will help him and his team to look at some of the other sites. Regarding, I can't really comment on to Cranbrook. I'm not quite sure, because I know the Cranbrook delivery team are looking at that, but certainly it may be worth bringing Andy or Thea from the Cranbrook delivery team to a future forum meeting, just to update us on how progress is going on that, so we get a sense of that. So there are separate negotiations going on there. I've just really focused, Chair, on what's in our gift to move forward with the action plan, and where we can really show that we've made some inroads that then can be reported as being touched upon through comms messaging that goes out. So it shows that it's not a strategy that's sitting on the shelf. They're actually moving forward, and I think that's a really important message. Really complex issues here, but we see a way forward, and I would like to think that there's a blanket sort of approval from the forum for us as officers to get moving with those areas that I've identified that will come out in the minutes.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for that clarification, Charlie. That's really helpful for us. I'll move over to Peter Gilpin, and then we'll go to, I think, a vote. Thank you.
Well, this might not be relevant now, Chair, but I was wondering whether it might help in that sort of ranking discussion to bring up something that I've spoken to Simon Davey about, and that is the renegotiation of the contract and management fee. For reasons that we will go into in much more detail in Part B, my concern, and I think I'm hoping, I'll defer to Simon in a minute, would share my view that with everything that's going on at the moment, where we were hoping at this point in time to be able to take a more long-term strategic view of the management fee over an extended period, I'd be very nervous about doing that now. My suggestion, and I will defer to Simon, which is in my later paper, is that we continue to take a one-year view. As Charlie said, it's essential that we have a fee agreed for 2023-24 by Christmas, ideally. Both parties need that security, but I would be a bit nervous now about then saying let's make a priority at this stage being a long-term financial view and business plan, and that in this time next year we should then be perhaps looking at that if we've got a clear review on how things are panning out with energy costs and the war in Ukraine and cost of living and mortgage interest rates and so on. So that just might be something for members to consider, whether we take perhaps a short-term view for another year, which takes the pressure off that item in being a long-term outcome. And as I say, I would defer to Simon really for his views on this, because it's not my decision ultimately.
Okay, thanks very much, Peter. Simon, would you like to come in briefly?
Thank you, Chair. It's not my decision either, Peter. It's the council's decision. But I concur with what you're saying in terms of there are issues you've raised in your budget variation report that we've talked through. So I think in terms of the volatility at the moment and the unknowns, I think an open book approach to next year would be sensible, but we can discuss that probably in Part B. In addition, I think I also agree with sort of Charlie's and also other members' views of prioritising this work. I think there's some key spend items within that list, but also there are some saving opportunities as well, particularly around the sort of shared use facilities. But I wouldn't underestimate the work that's required to renegotiate and consider those contracts. I think Charlie's mentioned about some additional resource to help us, and I think that'd be great in terms of start sketching out what work's required, what resource might be needed, and working with teams such as Tim's to understand that. But I'm sensing we'll probably, unfortunately, with my finance hat on, have to come back and ask for additional resources for some of these requests. But it's working out what is exactly we need, how much might that cost, and what are the different ways that we might present to fund that work. So in summary, I suppose the contract, my advice would be just to do another annual rollover, if you like, but we can discuss that later. I think members have highlighted the sort of Cranbrook resources as a key element, and I think that work will progress anyway through that work stream. But I would see the shared use agreements as being one of the top priorities, and I think members are agreeing with that.
Yeah, I think that makes logical sense. Thanks for that, Simon. And obviously the stock condition survey data as well, looking at that. Right, okay, so Councillor Young, Jeff, you'd like to come in.
Yeah, I agree with Peter and Simon. Now, there's too many unknowns to go for long term, and now the priority is to sort out these contracts to save some money. And as Simon says, the Cranbrook team are working on that separately, so that's full steam ahead on that one. So now a yearly agreement for the next couple of years until the country and ourselves sort ourselves out.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Councillor Hookway.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely agree with what's been said. There are a number of priorities here that run simultaneously, really, and that's very difficult. And I do appreciate all the hard work that officers have already done. I know there's been a huge amount of work. As I said earlier, the dual use sites, I think they are absolutely critical. Obviously, the renewal of the LED contract on a yearly basis. Who knows where we're going to be in a year's time. I think that's absolutely essential. The Cranbrook one will be slightly separate because there's a different set of officers. I suppose that the stock survey can be slightly slowed back. But my only suggestion is that these items are reported back to every LED monitoring forum on a regular basis until such times that we are satisfied that they no longer need to be. It's very difficult. We can't take our eye off the ball on any of them at the present time. But nevertheless, we have to just work through the best as we can. I know that's unsatisfactory from officers' point of view, but I think we really must keep these priorities ticking over. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Charlie, you'd like to come in?
Yeah, just very quickly, Chair, just to go back on Nick's point about reporting back. Hopefully the Excel spreadsheet that I've suggested will provide that mechanism in terms of a live and rolling reporting document where we can flag not only just progress, but also, as Simon's pointed out quite rightly, where we're facing specific challenges with getting some of those priorities moving forward or completed, and that could be down to internal resource issues. It could be that there's a breakdown in discussions with the school. It could be a whole range of other external factors that are beyond our control, but the forum will need to properly understand that, so you understand where we're at with those particular negotiations.
Thanks very much, Charlie. Well, I feel like we've reached a sort of glorious consensus on this item, and all of the discussion is going to be picked up in the minutes. One final thing I wanted to mention before we go on to the formal recommendation that Councillor Hookway has proposed is there was a really good discussion that I listened to, very brief discussion at the last forum meeting about the future of this forum. And as I think everybody who's been on this forum knows, it was set up originally when the relationship between East Devon District Councillors and LED wasn't known throughout the membership what LED did, even let alone our future relationship. And I feel like through the strategy that we've created, that has become sort of solidified. And I think the name of the forum, it's currently called the LED Monitoring Forum. I don't think that reflects what the priority of our ongoing work is going to be. I'm not going to make a proposal at this stage. It's something to think about in the future. But I think this forum now, I've discussed this with the chair, Councillor Hawkins, who can't be here today, but I feel what we're doing now is we're implementing the leisure strategy that's been created in partnership with LED. So I think the Leisure Strategy and LED Partnership Forum is probably a more appropriate name for what we're doing. But that's something that the leader would need to agree. And I believe he's joined the meeting now, as has Councillor Dent. So welcome to them both.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll go through any declarations of interest. Shall we do that now? Actually, I think that's something
none
do,
for me. Thank you,
None
Chair.
for you.
I'm no longer. I've now got myself into such buff condition that I'm not with LED anymore.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? We're victim of our own success at LED. Councillor Dent has returned from the dentist, and do you have any declarations, Alan? I believe you do have a declaration.
Well, my only declaration is that I'm an active member of LED down in Exmouth. I don't think it's not a pecuniary one, other than I pay a subscription. That's it.
It's an effects NRI. There we go. So it's not as you're not as buff yet as Councillor Arnott, who's left, because
I need far more work done on my body to get it fit again.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for that. So we'll move. So just to remind members of the recommendation before us that Councillor Hookway has proposed, we will need a seconder. The recommendation is that the LED Monitoring Forum agrees the programme of delivery for the key priorities identified in the Leisure Strategy Action Plan and the process for reporting progress on the Leisure and Built Facilities Strategy, and that the Leisure Enabler role will both facilitate and provide support for the delivery of those key priorities. So Councillor Hookway proposed that earlier, and we have Councillor Rowland's hand up. I'm hoping he may second it.
Certainly, Chair.
Lovely.
And did I hear Councillor Arnott correctly when he said he's in buff condition now? I haven't noticed any physical changes, so I'm just wondering how he measures that.
Look, there's a code of conduct in these meetings, and I wouldn't want to be othered or triggered or anything like that.
Well, we'll have to chuck you out, Jack, if you carry on, disrupting the meeting at any time. Anyway,
noted.
Let's move on to a vote then. Over to you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So if members could please vote using your green ticks or red crosses, or raise your electronic hand to abstain from the vote. Okay, Chair, so we have 7 green ticks in favour.
Thanks very much for that, Sarah. And now we move on to agenda item 11, which was briefly touched on in the previous agenda item, which is the Leisure Strategy Enabler role. Report to be presented by Charlie Plowden. Charlie.
I think it's actually getting presented by John.
My script is.
That's all right. That's all right. I know everyone thinks everything comes through me, but I don't want to grab the glory on this one. So John spent a lot of time on this, so I'll pass it over to him.
Thank you. So, Chair, as you say, this sits with the previous report. There's lots of overlaps, and what you've got on your agenda is the 2 bidding documents, really, that I put forward under the Shared Prosperity Fund. It's purely opportunistic, as you will see, to try and secure some additional resources and capacity, as you talked about on the previous agenda item, to draw in funding from elsewhere to deliver on what is an ambitious programme under the leisure strategy that we've adopted. Initially, I conceived it as delivering some of the health and wellbeing type items that I'm particularly keen on, as you know from previous discussions we had. But as Charlie mentioned earlier in presentation, recognise that they don't necessarily sit with those priority 1 actions. So we've secured, I think, £60,000 towards this work through the fund. Very happy that job, if you like, is shaped by Charlie and Tim to address those priority 1 actions that we've just agreed, which is a slightly different animal, but I think providing we meet the terms and conditions of the fund, and you will have perhaps picked up that one of the conditions was that this post is employed by LED. But I think we can share, within those constraints, we can still shape the job to focus on that delivery of the leisure strategy objectives, those Action 1 priorities, and work between LED and EDDC to ensure that we bring those forward as quickly as possible. Just provides a little bit of extra capacity, because I'm sure you realise we don't have a leisure team in EDDC. It's Charlie and myself to some extent. So that will help us deliver on some of these important priorities. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, John. I think I have a question, but I'm going to save it for now because I believe Councillor Loudon has joined the meeting, and I think we just got to ask him, as he's a forum member, whether he has any declarations of interest. If you're there, John. Maybe not. Yeah.
None, thank you, Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Right. So thanks, John, for your report. Do we have any questions from any non-forum members or forum members on this proposal? Don't seem to. I've just got a question on agenda pack page 32. So I see that the request is for £60,000 per year to fund the post. Is that, so John, probably a stupid question, but is that, how is that split? Is that mostly salary costs, or so the salary is being completely funded by elsewhere? I'm trying to get to grips around how it's funded. Thanks, John.
That's what I anticipated at the time. You might have seen I had to submit this bid in advance of the leisure strategy even being adopted by the council. So as I say, it's very speculative. There may be opportunity to secure some more funding under the scheme as well, I hope. But yes, mainly salary costs is how it was originally envisaged.
Thanks very much. Well, this is a report for noting. I see no other hands, so just thank you, John, for all the work you've done on this. And one final question, I guess, is do we have a timetable in terms of the job going out for advert? I guess, John.
Well, I think no is the honest answer to that. If I let Charlie and Tim tweak the job description, I think it's more perhaps asset property type focus than I originally envisaged, and then we'll get out to advert as soon as possible after that, Chair.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much, John. Thank you, members. So we'll move on swiftly to agenda item 12, which is the Community Leisure UK Statement on Energy Bill Relief Scheme. Report to be presented by Peter Gilpin. Peter.
Thanks, Chair. Actually, it's an appendix to agenda item 13, my report, if I could roll the two in together, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, if they're noting that, that's fine.
Yeah. So mindful this is a part A discussion and paper. This was something which I think I felt with legal advice from yourselves that this is a report which is able to go to the public and to explain, again, if we do a newsletter or something like that in due course, I think, and whatever the outcome is of funding agreements, I think the public probably are aware of this, but it's worth making clear some of the pressures which we're under, and we'll go into these in much more detail in part B. But quite clearly, the big issues at the moment are we're still not quite out of the COVID period, which I'm hearing anecdotally is growing again. It's not resulting in quite as many, certainly not as many deaths, but we are starting to see growths in hospitalizations again. And I think we may see people starting to avoid social contact again if it keeps going. A lot of people seem to be getting it. But the main main problems at the moment, which, changing on a daily basis, if you're watching the news yesterday, we're in a utility crisis, which has been mainly triggered by the war in Ukraine and seems to be escalating frequently. It's partly triggered a cost of living crisis because utility costs are going up. We've also got pressure on our customers through the cost of living through recent interest rate rises. So mortgages are going up, the cost of food is going up. So there's pressure on our customers, which is going to, I'm sure, put pressure on our revenue as people have to make lifestyle choices and spending choices about whether they take out a gym membership or they carry on coming to the gym. And it's certainly having an impact on LED in terms of our costs. As Jamie reported earlier, I'm pleasantly surprised, if I could say so, that our revenue has sort of been holding up to September. So we're not far off budget and what we sort of anticipated in terms of our revenue. Let's hope that continues. Let's hope the cost of living crisis doesn't suddenly start to see a dip in our revenue as people decide not to take out gym membership. But the big issue really for us has been the significant increase in costs. Utility costs, staffing costs are going up as well. We found it really difficult to recruit staff. This is common across the hospitality and leisure industry. And in order to recruit and retain staff, we were having to push wages and salaries up. We're paying the national living wage as a minimum, and that's to some age groups which wouldn't get the full rate, and we're having to pay the full rate to attract and retain staff. So really the paper and the appendix on the energy cap are there for information. I'm trying to get my head around this energy cap. I think the third paragraph is the one which sort of covers the concerns of the industry. And I thought it was worth sharing this paper from Community Leisure UK, because this is from their national survey across England, Scotland and Wales. And quite a number of leisure trusts contributed to this and identified the three main concerns there in the third paragraph. That the cap only covers wholesale prices, which is only part of what we're charged. The cap is higher than we were paying for energy pre-COVID, pre-Ukraine war, I should say. So the cap still includes quite a bit of a price rise, and the timeline is not particularly clear, and companies such as ours, where we've locked into some prices, we're going to find at the end of that contract a significant increase because that cap's significantly higher. So I thought that paper was quite helpful in explaining the energy relief scheme, and that it isn't a cap which just keeps all of our costs neutral. We're going to still see significant costs in increases in utility costs, which we'll cover in the next part of the meeting. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Do we have any questions from members, either outside the forum or inside? No. So that those reports 12 and 13 are just for noting anyway. So we now move swiftly on to agenda item 14, which is a late item and an urgent item, which has been brought, which is on Collerton Leisure Centre, capital contribution to schools investment works to all-weather pitch, which I believe is Tim Child.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Quite a brief report. So the wider issue of restructuring the arrangements at the dual use site that has been talked about quite a lot in the earlier agenda items was actually discussed back at the June forum. That report talked about restructuring the agreements, the lease and the management agreement, ultimately resulting in a more financially advantageous package for the council. But it also dealt with a recommendation to make a capital contribution of up to £140,000 for works that the school were undertaking to the all-weather pitch. In exchange, the community would receive greater community use of that all-weather pitch. The purpose really of this report is that earlier report said that payment of that financial contribution of up to 140k would be made on completion of the new lease and the new management agreement. However, with those discussions still ongoing, and I say ongoing, they are in terms of agreeing heads of terms, we are probably 95, maybe 99% of the way there. So it's pretty much done, but not quite over the line yet. So those works are dragging on a little, but at the same time, the school have been able to get on with the works, which is great news. And I think the works are being completed this week, stroke next week. So what this report today does is, in effect, asks or puts forward a recommendation that we make the £140,000 or maximum £140,000 contribution in advance of those completed agreements being in place. So it's a very minor issue, but because the earlier report said it would be once those agreements have been completed, hence the need for this report today. I would specifically draw members' attention to the legal comments at the end of the report, which highlights that there is a risk with this approach, i.e. we make the payment, but we don't get the completed lease and management agreement in place. However, the way that will be mitigated will be by way of requesting that the school enter into, in effect, a grant agreement with repayment to the council if that new lease and management agreement aren't completed. And we've included a long stop date of December next year. And I think we'd all hope it'll be much, much sooner than that, but we've provided that as an absolute long stop date. So, as I said, this item today is merely about making that payment in advance of the legal agreements being concluded. And I'm obviously happy to take any questions.
Hey, thank you very much for that, Tim. First, we have Councillor Rowland. Jack.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Tim. I think this makes perfect sense, to be honest. I understand that there is that risk, but I think it's fairly minimal in the circumstances. And I think it shows good faith on behalf of this council if we actually go ahead with this recommendation. So I'm not sure if you're expecting this forum to be making a recommendation through to Cabinet, but I'd formally like to make that recommendation to Cabinet as it stands on the agenda paper.
So the recommendation, Jack, just is the Cabinet. It is to Cabinet the delegate authority to service lease place assets and commercialisation, which is Tim, in consultation with strategically finance. Which is Simon, and Henry, strategically governance and licensing, and portfolio holder economy and assets, which is Councillor Hayward, to arrange advance payment of the capital contribution of up to 140,000 prior to completion of the new lease and management agreement. And so you're happy to propose that, Jack?
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so we've now moved over to Councillor Arnott. Paul.
Thank you, Chair, and forgive me, I realised I should, excuse me, declare in effect NRI as the district ward member for Collie Valley, in which the school sits, and also as a Collerton parish councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Paul. That's noted. Okay, so I have a quick question actually for Tim. Just on this on this grant agreement that you've just spoken about if the new lease and management agreements aren't completed, we have sort of this backstop of a grant agreement that we can make. Is that binding, Tim? If when you say there's a risk, is that a legally binding agreement or not?
Thank you, Chair. It's not perfect.
Okay.
Hence, it's flagged as a risk. Again, going back to the legal implications at the end of the report, which Henry prepared, it says that this represents a risk to the council, which is acknowledged in the report and mitigated by the intent of having, in effect, a grant agreement. It isn't without risk. Fundamentally, in an ideal world, you'd complete the agreements that we needed in place, the new lease and the new management agreement. Once we had what we wanted, then we would have paid the money over to the school. Here there will be an ability by way of the grant agreement to contractually request the monies back from the school. But of course, that's not necessarily the same as meaning that the school will then pay the money back without issue. It is low risk, and as Henry has flagged up, it is acknowledged within the report itself, but it isn't without risk.
No, thanks for that clarification, Tim. Really appreciate it. Councillor Hookway, Nick.
Happy to second the proposal, Chair.
Wonderful. Okay, so we have a recommendation. Over to Sarah to do the votes, if that's okay.
Thank you. So if members could please vote just in the usual way with their green ticks and red crosses, or raise your electronic hand to abstain. So, Chair, we have 7 green ticks in favour.
Good.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. I think that's unanimous. So that brings the public part of our meeting to an end. However, can I just remind all those present that the sporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live, and until then, your